Welcome to Grace in the Grind. We're here to tell the story behind the story of some of the most successful entrepreneurs to inspire you to keep moving, keep going, and to do all that God's called you to. And today, I have a really dear friend of mine, Doug. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Jim. Thank you. I appreciate the warm welcome and the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, man, I think we're going to have a great conversation today. But before we do, take 30 to 90 seconds and just tell the audience who you are and what you do.
So I'm Doug, the blue collar coach Ferrier. I work with blue collar workers mostly. I lead them from feeling like they're lacking self-awareness and accountability to owning and elevating their life and their business. Some of the things we do is we work on your habits. Let's get some better habits going because your habits help form your days. We work on the mindset, owning yourself, owning your life, owning your days. And then I have this great proprietary software that I use to help businesses increase their profits and just find ways to streamline the business.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And guys, as you always know, for you guys who've been listening to the show, we will have a lot of different things in the show notes. So make sure at some point you check the show notes for any links or any things like that. So, Doug, let's dig into some of your story. Blue collar coach. I love that. What does that look like? Like, how did you become the blue collar coach?
As some people have heard my story, back in 2014, I was working in a blue collar industry. I have most of my life. And I hit one of my breaking points. It was my deepest rock bottom from an emotional standpoint. And I stood at the edge of a roof, not really seeing a way out of this hole that I was in, this emotional black hole that I had put myself in. And I looked over the edge of the roof and I saw a way out. But instead of taking that step forward, I stepped back and I decided to do the inner work and start healing myself. And when I did that, one of the things I discovered was that I wasn't alone. In fact, men in the blue collar industries have the highest rate of taking their own lives. And that hit deep for me because I've lost some dear friends, family that way. And I wanted to make a difference in people's lives.
So you have a lot there we can unpack. And so you're on a rooftop, but you said put myself in that black hole. How did you put yourself there? What does that look like?
Here's the funny thing. Up until that point, I didn't put myself there. I would never label it that way. It was everything around me put me there.
Okay.
I lost my dad at 12 years old to cancer. I didn't just lose him. I was standing beside his bed when they turned off the life support machine. And I had a negative feeling from that. And I carried a negative emotion with that, tied a negative emotion to that. And I refused to find any positive in it. And it was all these different events that happened to me in my life caused by other people. And I just buried everything. And then I realized, you know what? I talk about this in my book. I'm not directing my life. I'm merely an extra in my life. I'm not even a main character right now. I'm just an extra being told what to do. So I realized that my lack of commitment to my own life, my lack of action, lack of ownership had put me in this hole that I needed to get out of. It was time to turn that around. And
yeah. So what was one of the defining moments of that? So as I'm hearing the story, you're like, the environment, the situations put you in this place, not a main character, want to be a main character. What were some of the key moments that caused breakthrough?
The big three on that route, there's three big things that stood out to me. The first one was my son, 16 years old. Here I am leading him as a man, showing him how to be a man. And I questioned my integrity as a man at that moment because the situation I put myself in. There was my daughter who years before, I had this great memory of taking her to Walmart to buy her first bicycle. And as we're walking through, she's ringing the bell saying, "Look out, bike coming through." And I questioned, again, my manhood and my fatherhood. And I had a bit of a pull from my kids to be there for them. And then I remembered the passing of my father and what that did to me, how that impacted my life. And that was my defining moment. Like, no more. I'm not going to allow that to be the legacy that I leave for my kids. I'm not going to create that legacy for them.
Powerful. Go ahead, continue. Yeah.
And from that moment forward, I decided it was time to live, time to own my life and to live. And I recalled that when I was younger and I got into these hot spots, when my dad passed away, I was raised Catholic. And when my dad passed away, I denounced God. I denounced him. I had beef with him. I was ready to go toe to toe with him. I was so mad. But then when I got into times of trouble, as a teenager, getting arrested, things like that, I remember praying and my situation changing. Not even a year before I stood on the edge of that roof, I got a tattoo that takes up half my back, and it's a cross with angels' wings. And I knew that I needed to lean back into my faith a bit at least a little bit, to help steer me in a better direction.
Do you find that now I've got two lines of questioning here, so we're going to follow one and go back and swing back to the other one, because this is great stuff. And before I get to the faith one, because the faith one I want to definitely dive into, and the ramifications of obviously the tattoo leading into the roof. But there's something you said earlier, and then something that we had talked about. You said what was done to me, the environment and things, and then you came back and said what I did to myself. And so I want to push into that a little bit further, because there seems to be almost an inconsistency. Was it your choices that caused all of your feelings, or was your thought process of, hey, this is just happening to me, I accept it? Help me understand that process.
So there was a combination. There's obviously events that we have no control over, but we do have control over how we respond to them. It's our responsibility, our ability to respond. However, at the time, I was not taking that responsibility seriously. So things would happen, whether it was my cause or not, and I didn't want to own it.
Mm.
And then as I started to do the inner work and make the changes, I was more willing to own it. And interestingly enough, when I was a teenager, I owned everything. I didn't care. Nothing fazed me. I owned everything. And then I got to the point where I stopped owning it. I started blaming outside sources. And then I went back to owning it.
So what do you find that, because I know this is going to be a lot of things the listener is dealing with in some of this, because there is this huge temptation to blame everything else for my feelings. And I like the transparency and just the rawness that you're sharing is, I owned it, I didn't own it, I owned it, didn't own it. Now I'm owning it again. Love that. So what were some of the factors that helped you reconnect with owning it? What were some of those factors? Was it just the kids, or were there more happening?
The kids started it. That was that's what got it into motion. And then it was realizing that, you know what, everything is possible in this life. I can achieve whatever I want as long as I'm willing to own everything. Everything I had up to that point was a direct result of choices I'd made before. So I knew that if I wanted to have more, I needed to be more, and I needed to own it all. I started doing the research and studying high performers and people that came before me, personal development, all that stuff. You know, the greats, Tony Robbins, Brendan Burchard, John Maxwell. I started studying all of them, trying to figure out how I could improve my life. And one of the big things that I saw was a lot of ownership.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So then now let's go to the roof.
Yeah.
Okay. So were you owning it before the roof, or was it post rooftop experience? Did you start owning things? What does that look like for you?
It was on the roof when I started owning it.
So
I literally stepped away from the edge. I sat on my bucket of tools, put my head in my hands, raised my head up, and I looked around, and there was nobody there. I was by myself. And it was in that moment I realized that nobody was coming to save me. And I finally understood what it meant when people say nobody's coming to save you. I had lots of people that cared about me, but if I wasn't willing to do the work and willing to make the changes, it didn't matter how much people cared and loved me.
Oh, wow. Man, thank you for unpacking that a little bit, because you're like, I looked around and, dude, so you just came to your senses while you were up on the roof.
Yeah, it was just like, it was a light switch.
Thank God that you did. I'm grateful for the last year of our friendships. I'm glad you did step away and all the impact you're going to make in the blue collar world. All right. So now we have this story developing. We have where you're owning things, you're stepping away from the roof. You have the revelation, I need to make an impact and stuff like that. Where was step one coming off that roof?
It was accepting that I had made choices that I needed to change. And it wasn't that I needed to change the past, but I needed to accept what I did and start making the changes to improve. There was forgiveness, a lot of forgiveness. I had to forgive a lot of people, including myself. I even had to forgive people that didn't want to apologize because they didn't see that they had done wrong. There was things that they did that hurt me, and I needed to forgive them for it.
Okay. So then how long did it take you? So you must have been dealing with a massive amount of emotion, right? Massive amount of like, I have to forgive people. I don't want to forgive them. I have to, like, all of this stuff. Like, we all deal with this stuff. So man, this is so, I have me so fascinated. So then how did you start? So forgiveness, and the other one was acceptance, forgiveness. How did you make this massive shift into doing the self-worth work? And now you're a coach, and now you're coaching blue collar. Like, where did the two come together?
One of my pivotal days, I remember I'd taken a job. I've been an entrepreneur for over 12 years. Actually, I think it's 14 years now. steady. I had taken a job shortly after that day on a roof, and I was working for a company for about 6 months. I was manager of a division. And I remember one day a guy came into my office, and I worked till 5. That was it. 5 o'clock, I was done. I was out the door. I didn't care. He came into my office at 5 minutes to 5, and he'd messed up big time. Like, he made a massive mistake. He put the company's reputation at jeopardy, and he was in hot water. Like, it was,
Right.
he was getting fired over this.
Oh, wow.
And he came in and he wanted to talk. And we sat there and we talked for at least half an hour, 45 minutes. And after he left my office, the realization of what I had just done, how I just helped somebody. Did I save his job? Maybe for a little bit because he wasn't gone right away. But I helped him understand that he needed to own what he had done. And it just felt amazing to make a difference in somebody's life. And then I recalled different events in my life. And it's, man, those little key moments that you just take for granted. Little moments like that. I was like, I feel like there's a calling there. And because somebody was brave enough to make the step before me, they helped me to build the courage to take the step myself.
Man, so you brought something up. First and foremost, bro, key moments of impact, dude. Dude, I love it. So you've been an entrepreneur for 12 years. Where was the rooftop experience in those 12 years? Was it before? Was it mid?
It was at the start. That was 2 years in.
So you were 2 years in, and then you had the rooftop experience, and now you have 10 years post. Talk to me about the real differences in who you are, how you think, that led up to the first 2 years rooftop, post 10 years now. Weigh that out for me, because this is fascinating stuff for me.
We're going deep here. There's a lot. So the entrepreneurial journey started again right after my second separation. And the weight of that turning into a divorce, the realization of not seeing my kids as much as I want to. My number one value is family. That weighs heavy. So that really weighed me down a lot. But then after that moment, I realized that it doesn't have to be the picture perfect white picket fence version of family. It's not about how much time we spend together in our lives, but it's about how much life is in the time we spend together. There's one of Kanye's songs, and I love this line, and maybe he means something different by it, but the line is, "My presence is my present." And I say that all the time to my family, like, my presence is my present. Sometimes it's a joke, but most of the time it's, no, this is one of the presents I'm giving you. And I tell them all the time, if I'm not being present with you, feel free to give me a nudge. And if that nudge is a slap upside the head, so be it.
Right.
So that changed everything, because now, instead of looking at having this massive quantity of time, I was more focused on the quality of the time we were spending together and making those moments last, making them important and valuable. And then from that, I was able to build myself, number one, and start to get into a place where I was ready to be in a solid quality relationship with myself. Then I was ready to be in a relationship with somebody else. And then I was ready to build better business relationships.
I like the progression of that self, others, business relationships. Like, that's a very healthy progression. And that was actually going to be the next question I was thinking. Like, so you've had 2 divorces or 2 separations and ultimately divorce. Like, how is the quality and the strength of your relationships now that you've done all this inner work? Did you find it is increasing? Do you find it's better? What does that look like?
It is better.
Okay.
It's not as good as I'd like it to be, but it's better. I put the effort in, and I find that now when things don't go, I should say, my way, I don't get as upset. I don't get triggered. I meet people where they're at, and it helps the relationship so much. I have those hard conversations now so much easier. I used to be afraid to have the hard conversations because I was like, oh, everybody's going to get upset. They're going to get defensive. Now I'm okay with it. And if you're not okay with it, and if you get defensive and offended by us having a hard conversation, we need to talk a little bit deeper.
So let's switch gears a little bit. This has been such a fascinating thing. And I know you, the listener who is sitting here, like, on listening to this story, will maybe connecting to it, like the strength of how much you were struggling versus how much you could be struggling less. There's so much in this story that is powerful, which I think positions you as an amazing coach, Doug. Now let's switch gears a little bit, because you have a book coming out. And so to you guys, the listener, by the time you listen to this particular episode, his book will be out, and there will be a link inside the show notes that I do want you to go grab. But let's talk about the book and what it looks like and who's it for. And then let's get it behind the scenes of the process of you getting to actually be an author.
So the book is for anybody that is willing to put their ego aside, is willing to grow, is willing to look at the possibility that maybe, just maybe, they might need to do things a little bit different in their life. Maybe they need to change their mindset. Maybe they need to change their habits. Maybe they need to develop more ownership. I talk about some life events in there, the passing of my father, how I didn't own that for years. And I didn't own the passing, but I owned how I responded to it. I had a serious car accident in 2020, one that I was T-boned by a transport truck. He ran the red light. It wasn't my fault, but I put myself in that place in that specific point in time. So it's one of the things I talk about is just accepting that everything you're getting out of life is because of choices you're making. And I got so deep on that, I forgot what the last part of that was.
That's okay. I love it because that's a great lesson from a book. And guys, if you're listening, make sure you grab that book because that's a life lesson you need if you want to go up a level. And this is from somebody, both me and Doug, who have been in leadership development, whether personally or professionally, because I've been doing it 20 years. These are lessons that will radically shift your life. Let's just go into some other questions then. Writing this book, the process, did you find that you were fighting some old feelings to get to writing, or did you just get down and dirty in the writing? You're like, I don't care. We writing this thing. What does that look like?
It started off, I was like, yep, getting it done. Let's go, giddy up. I'm going to write a 50,000 word book. Let's go. This is going to be #1 bestseller. And then I started writing it. Mm-hmm. That was a little off. And I actually remember this one point in time. It was actually last January. My wife was in Costa Rica for a work retreat. And while I'm working on the book, all of a sudden these ants start coming up, automatic negative thoughts. Mm. And I was like, whew, I need to pause and just own this and look into this, go deeper. And I actually reached out to a couple of people that are important to me and they've helped me before. Hey, this is what's going on right now. I just need an ear. And we just had a couple conversations and it helped me work through it. And then I was able to jump in there, work through it and get back into the book. And now it's exciting because the book's almost done. Like it's being edited right now. And it's just, man, what a difference. And I put it on hold for a bit because I was...
What were you scared of?
Putting myself out there, because once it's on paper, it's there for life.
That's powerful. It's powerful in as much that the vulnerability it takes to, and humility it takes to actually share that. And that is where the connection and the powerful, especially as a guy, we don't want to share those things. And that's so right. That's huge, man. And so we're going to make sure you guys, the listener, as we're progressing in this conversation, just always remember two things. Number one, show notes are going to have everything in it. But number two, if you have any questions that you would love to send in or ask Doug or anything, we're going to give you his socials here for a minute. You can reach out to him personally, or you can just comment on whatever. If you're on YouTube, because this is live on YouTube, you can comment below or send me a message at Lead with Jim on any of the socials, and we'll make sure to get you an answer. With that all being said, as we start to land the plane of this particular episode, I have 3 questions for you, pretty much. All right. Now, 2 of the questions are going to be about a wisdom bomb and how do people find you? But before we get into that, I'm very curious, like the blue collar thing. I want to go back to that because this has been a journey on this episode to get to this place. Do you find, you had mentioned it earlier a little bit, but do you find that the people that you're working with have struggled greatly with the things that you've started getting victory in? Or is this just a new set of struggles that you're finding as you do this? Like, how are the people that you've decided to work with truly connecting with you?
It's a struggle that a lot of people have had. It's not a newly developed struggle. It's something that's existed for decades, for generations. And it's not just in the blue collar workers either. It's everywhere.
So if it's being everywhere, but your specific focus is on those blue collars, and can you define blue collar for me and the listeners, just so we all have the context of that?
It's pretty much anything that's service-based. So it could be a construction worker, trade worker, police officer, military, firefighters, all people that do services and provide services for the community or for the world.
Would you consider like coaches, online coaches, as part of that blue collar?
They're a combination. They're blue collar and white collar.
Okay.
Maybe I should do like a blue and white stripe collar from now on.
There you go, man.
Mix it up.
Nah, I love the blue collar thing, dude. My grandfather was a blue collar guy. I've have nothing but respect for all of those guys. My daughter actually is an EMT now, so she is
Nice.
so heart, and I'm prior military, so heart is always there. So with that being said, let's do two things. Number one, let's do a wisdom bomb. And for you guys who are the listeners, this is the part of the show where we get a portable truth, #wisdom bomb. If you're on Facebook, just put #wisdom bomb and you will find I do a daily wisdom bomb. And with that being said, what's a wisdom bomb you would leave for our guest?
I think one of my favorites would be that you have a choice. You can be an extra in your life, or you can be the director, the producer, the writer, and the main character. Be the director. Be the producer.
I love it. It comes back to choice. You make the choice. Be the director. Be the main character, man. I'm an anime fan. Be the main character, because you never hear from the extras ever again. So
that's right.
All right. So how can we find you?
Easiest way, best way where I'm most active is Facebook, coach.doug.ferrier.
Okay.
I'm also on Instagram, Douglas_Ferrier. I've got 2 websites. One's fancy, one's not so pretty, but there's douglasferrier.com, and then the longer one, inbusinessbreakthroughs.com.
Awesome.
And that's mostly for my business coaching clients.
Wonderful. And what I'm going to do is, again, as you heard it twice so far, you will have that all in the show notes, because we want to make it as easy as possible for you to go visit our guest so that you can connect. With that being said, Doug, thank you for being on Grace in the Grind. We appreciate you, and we appreciate the value that you've brought.
You're welcome. I appreciate this opportunity, and I really hope that somebody gets some value out of what I shared today.
Yeah, man, I'm sure. I know I got some value, and I'm almost positive the listeners are going to do that as well. So with that being said, you have been listening to Grace in the Grind, where we dive into the stories behind success. We get into those deep, gritty stories that are rarely ever talked about. So on Grace in the Grind, we will get those to inspire you so that you can do all that God has called you to do. And with that being said, make sure you interact with this episode, wherever you're listening. If you're on Apple, iRadio, on those things, hit us up with a follow and maybe a review. If you're on YouTube, www.leadwithjim.live. If you want to go to YouTube to see the video version of this, and make sure you hit subscribe and ask your questions in the comments. With that being said, you have been listening to Grace in the Grind, and we appreciate you, and we'll see you on the next episode.
This has been Grace in the Grind. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on social media at Lead with Jim. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you next time on Grace in the Grind.